Hello everyone and welcome to today's Blue Mountain Customer Boost on purchasing. My name is Savannah Evans and I'm on the marketing team here at Blue Mountain. We see a lot of people just still filing in, so we're going to just give 1 or 2 more minutes while everyone gets their audio set up, and then we'll get started. All right, hello again everyone. Thank you to everyone who just joined. Today's topic is going to be on purchasing, and I have John Vallejo in the room here who's going to be leading the training.
Hello everyone.
Before we get started with the training today, we are just going to run through a few logistics first. Okay, so for many of you, I know you've probably attended previous Customer Boost or Customer Labs in the past, but for those of you who are new, I just wanted to run through the differences. The first is the Customer Lab, which is held on the first Wednesday of every month at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. These are designed to be more of an open forum where we encourage discussion among our customers or with the Blue Mountain team regarding different topics and features of Blue Mountain RAM. These typically run about 30 minutes. And then the second one is the one we're hosting today, which is our Blue Mountain Customer Boost. This is held on the third Thursday of every month at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and is designed to be more of a free training session to help enhance our users' knowledge of the software. If you haven't registered for either of these, or if you have other team members in your company who may benefit, I did post the registration links in the chat window, so we encourage you to share those with anyone else in your company. Next, I want to point out that registration for the 2019 Blue Mountain Summit is coming to a close. We'll be ending next week, and the summit is going to be taking place October 28th through the 31st in State College, Pennsylvania. We are limited in seats, but there are still a few remaining. In particular, track 2, which is R3 admin training, has only 7 seats remaining. And so if you are interested in attending, we do recommend registering soon, since seats will be closing next week. For today's discussion, we do encourage you to either share comments or ask questions. We will be saving all Q&A until the end. So you can either raise your hand, and then at the end of the training, we will unmute you, and then you can ask your question or comment over the phone. Or your second option is to just type your question or comment in the questions panel of GoToWebinar. And then, like I said, we'll save all of Q&A until the end of the training, and then we'll open it up for discussion. All right, so now I'll pass things over to John.
All right, hello everyone. My name is Jonathan Vallejo. I'm a business process analyst here at Blue Mountain. So let me first start by at least getting logged into the system first. Or not. I can't spell. All right. We're going to go a different route here. All right. So what we're going to talk to you today about is the purchasing aspect of RAM. It's one of our lesser used functions, but it is still very useful for some of our customers. So purchasing revolves around vendor items, parts, spare parts, and we can track the way that we're purchasing and receiving those items when they come into our inventory. So first, I'm going to do a little setup here. So I will go to my queries, and I'm going to start by making sure I have a vendor listed available first. So I did create one a little bit before. I have a vendor listed, test vendor 1, contact name. I can provide some general information about this person. And then you'll see that there's going to be an items tab that we'll be discussing in a little bit. But first, I have to create my part. So if I go to my inventory, all right, so I have this part here. It's going to be called test part 1. So I have test vendor 1 and test part 1. And what I want to do is I'm going to associate this part to my vendor. That way I can create a vendor item. So there's a couple of different ways I can do that. One of the easiest ways to do it is going actually back to the vendor. So I'm sorry to kind of move around, but I'm just going to go back to my vendors here, open this up, and click on my items. Once I put this vendor in the edit mode, I can use the new button to select what my item number is going to be, or actually enter what my item number is going to be. Give it a price here. And discuss how many units. So when I order these in, are they coming in by each? Are they coming in cases? For me, normally I would like to use the each just because I can keep track of those a little bit better. And then finally would be if this was a taxable item, I would just check off that taxable amount there. Going to add that, close. So now I'll see my item listed here. If I scroll to the right, you'll see that I still don't have a part number description just yet. So I could right click on this. Oh, wait, before I do that, let me save it. And if I right click on that item, I can click on the associate part. I'll click the part that I have available. And now if I scroll to the right, actually, let me refresh it. You'll see that now that part that was created is now associated with the vendor. So anytime that I need to create a purchase request or receive an item and I know I have a vendor item available, it's going to know to look right at this part, which is test part number 1. So when we talk about parts, we're talking about, or when we're talking about the purchasing part of it, we're thinking of updating quantities, those parts, receiving new items in, and the first thing we have to do is create a purchase request for that. So I could go into the vendor and go into the items here, open this part up. Oops, sorry. Going into details, sorry about that. Sorry, going into the parts here. So as you can see, I don't have any purchase orders open right now or any purchase requests just yet. So what I'm going to do is go into my actions and create a purchase request. So when we look at a purchase request, we can see because I selected it from this item, it fills in some of the information already. So I have my part available there, the part store that's going into, the requested vendor, and so forth. You'll see that the only requirement is going to be that requested quantity. That's going to let the person know that's creating this purchase order eventually how many that they need to order in. That is for a general part that we already have. If I was looking at a vendor item, as I just associated with, I would select my vendor, and then after that, I would select my item that has been associated. So there's a couple different ways that we can do it. This way, when we select the vendor item, it knows some of the general information that I've already filled in about that part. And lastly, if there's a part that you're not tracking in RAM just yet, you can actually select the other item, and you would just fill out the general information as we see fit. So we put in an item number, the item name, and the item description as well. But we're going to go the vendor item route because it's already been set up for us. And I select my item, and I'm going to say I need 10 of these, and I will need it by the end of the month here. All right. So I'm going to add this item on to my purchase request. I can close out this window, and you'll see if I move this around a little bit. We have the one line item here. It's our test part 1. We have a requested quantity of 10, and the date it's requested by is the end of the month. I am also able to add in any comments in here, so I need this to perform calibration. Whatever you need to put in those comments, just a little bit more information again to that purchaser, whoever's going to be creating this purchase order eventually. After that, I would save my purchase request, give it an audit reason. All right, and you'll notice it's in the draft state now. So as we go forward, what I would do is I would set this off. This would go over to whoever the purchasing reviewer would be or whoever approves these. In this scenario, I will also be my own approver, and I will check over the purchase request, make sure what they want, when they need it by, and then I'm going to provide my electronic signature. This is going to be submitting for approval. All right, we now have an open purchase request. And at this point, what I would do is actually create my purchase order for this. So I could do it right from this window here. I'll go into Actions and create purchase orders. So we see we have our purchase request item listed. If we had multiple items, they would all be listed. We could say unselect all items. So if we had 3 or 4 different items on there, would unselect those, and you could just select the ones that you're actually sending over the purchase order for, because sometimes you're not going to be sending a purchase order for all 3 of them. You might have to talk to multiple vendors. So it might only be one purchase order for select items and another purchase order for the other items here. So I'm going to have my item that I selected and requested. I have my rule name here. So in my scenario, I'm only using purchase order simplified. This just means I don't need an e-signature to close this out. Whereas if you were using the e-signature, it would have that review state in there. So I'm going to use purchase order simplified, click next, and it's going to show me how many do I want to order at this point. How many am I actually submitting for this purchase order? So originally what was requested was 10, and we have that unit cost of 55 per each unit. So in this scenario, maybe I ordered extra, so I'm going to say there were 15, and because I ordered a little bit more, they gave me a discount of $5 each. You'll see that the estimated cost has updated to that $7.50 as I've updated my quantities and my purchase cost, and I still have the rest of the information here for the due date, the description, and the taxable amounts as well. I hit next, and you'll see that the purchase order has been accepted. Has that now green check mark. I'm able to open it from here. Let me close out this window. Some of them do pop up quite often, so I'm going to minimize some of them to avoid some of the confusion. So I now have my purchase order. It is in the open state. I see what the subtotal would be for my cost, any discount available to me, any tax amounts, and so forth. So what I'm going to do as the person that's going to be purchasing this, I'm going to edit this information, make sure that I have a tax rate. So in Pennsylvania, we have a 6% tax rate here, so I'm going to update that as well. I would submit any comments if I needed to. Submitted purchase request number, put any comments for the request number there. Again, I don't need to put this in. The comments are just any additional information I would need. Going into the billing and shipping, if I had a billing contact, so personnel that we would have here, we could say it's for BMQR. What our address is here would be 475 Roland Ridge. State College. Yeah. And if this, if I had all this information filled out for my personnel here, so that my J Vallejo account here that I'm using, if I had any of that information in there as far as the address, the company name, city, state, all that information would actually fill in. But with this scenario, my account doesn't have any of that, so I'm just filling out some of this stuff manually right now. I see the items that I'm going to be shipping or I'm going to be ordering. And finally, you have the receipt section. Now, this is going to be blank until I actually officially receive these items and I create my receipt for it. So now that I've made some edits to it and I've actually finalized my purchase order, I'm going to save this. Provide an audit reason. And now that it's been in the open state, I can go into my actions and receive purchase order. Let me minimize in the background, again, trying to avoid a little bit of confusion. So here, once we get this purchase receipt wizard window pop up, we can either add our PO items, so the ones that are already on that purchase order. We have our items available. Like I said, this is now going to receipt factors. So sometimes you're going to have to select multiples, and sometimes you don't receive the one item because that has a later shipping date. So you might only select the one or two items. In this scenario, we only have the one, so we are receiving this as of right now. And we're just going to update how many we received. We ordered 15, maybe we only received 12, and we're waiting on them, the 03, they might be on back order or something. So right now we're just going to update that we have 12 in this scenario. Hit next. Last thing you need to do here is just put in any comments if you need to. I don't think we need to at this point. We already have the receipt items. We put comments on the request and on the purchase order. This receipt would just say maybe 3 waiting on 3 remaining due to back order. And unfortunately, I cannot spell all the time, so you'll have to deal with that for the next couple minutes. Sorry about that. And we're going to click Finish. We see our receipt here. So we have receipt ID number 2, and we can click Close. Now what we're going to do, we're going to look at this part that we've been dealing with. This was open in the background, so I'm actually going to refresh this record. And we can see our purchasing, and we see that we have one line open that we are waiting for those 15. We received the 12 here. The status was open, and the day that it was entered and put in. If we look at our actual locations and the inventory amount, we can see that my quantity has actually auto-updated once we receive those items. So initially, our part inventory was only at 0. Once we entered in this receipt, we actually upped it to that 12 amount once we received those items. So if we ever have to go back to that purchase order, we are able to. We can just go from here because this still is an open one. So say I received those last 3 the day after, or maybe the week after. I can open up my purchase order again, go into actions, and receive my remaining 3 that I need to. This time I've only received the you double click, it does come up with this menu. Sometimes it's a little bit easier to read than scrolling left and right. And now we have receipt. Great. So now that we've actually finally received every single item, I'm going to minimize this purchase order. I just want to make sure that my actual inventory has updated. So I'm going to refresh this again. And now you'll see that we have 15. If you look on the part and you look at our transactions, you can see all the receipts. If you transferred the quantity from one location to another, if parts were used during any work orders, you'd see all those transactions in this transaction table. What I'm going to do is actually close my purchase order though, because we did receive all the items we needed to. So I'm going to use the change status because I'm using the simplified version. I'm just going to use the change status, close it out. This one might have been open while I was in the back, so let me refresh this and set this again. See, purchase order has been closed. The other thing we would need to close as well, which sometimes we have the SQL job to actually close out this purchase request. So overnight, as we see this purchase request that we originally had, that SQL job would run. It would show that the purchase order has been closed. That's associated with that purchase request. But you guys only have 40-ish minutes remaining, so we're not going to wait overnight for that purchase request to close out. So we're going to do it manually here. Do I have it open in the background? I do. All right, same thing here. I'm just going to refresh this just because this was open in the background and we don't want to see any of those errors. We're going to use the change status here and we're going to show that it's closed. Again, if we had that SQL job run overnight, we wouldn't actually have to worry about this purchase request because once all those items are received on the purchase order and the purchase order is closed, that SQL job runs and it looks for every purchase order that's associated with purchase request and closes out all the purchase requests for you. There we go. We now have a closed purchase request, a closed purchase order. We received our items. We can track all of our purchasing here. So we have the 2 purchase orders. We can track our purchase request here. And that's bulk of purchasing as far as the parts go.
Okay, we'll open up for questions.
Yeah, we could open up for questions now. If there's any other questions, again, it wasn't necessarily about the parts, more about the purchasing, but you can answer questions about parts as well.
Again, if you would have any questions or have any comments to share, you can either type them in the questions panel or you can raise your hand. If you do raise your hand, once you hear that you're unmuted, we just ask that you say your name and company over the phone before proceeding to ask your question. But we'll give a few more minutes here to see if there are any questions that come in. And in the meantime, we do have a certificate from today's training, and that link can be found in the chat window. I also want to point out that a lot of our customer booths specifically revolve around topics that are covered in our Blue Mountain RAM functionality e-learning. And so if you do not own a copy of the e-learning and would like to try it out, we do offer a free 7-day trial, and that link can also be found in the chat window. Okay, we did have a question come in. The question is, they said, I'd like to use the purchase option in a GMP operations. In that case, I need to change the status from quarantine to released. Can I do this?
You are able to create rules around these purchasing. It would not necessarily be anything that's out of the box or our template version of it, but yes, we can create rules around purchasing to have it go to various statuses that you would need for your own internal GMP process.
Someone else asked, did you progress the purchase order because there was a rule in place?
Yes, so the rule that I was using was the purchase order simplified. It's part of the, I'm using the best practices template that we have here. So we have two rules. One is the purchase order simplified and one is the purchase order with e-signature. Both those rules, you will need to transition the records. The only difference is the e-signature requires that signature, so it has a review state for the purchase order itself. Whoever reviews that purchase order, they will see all the items, make sure it's going the right quantity, location, etc. They would give off their signature, and then they would actually be able to close out that record at that point. But again, those are just rules that we use. The simplified one does not require that review state, and we can just simply transition it to closed and open as we need.
Follow-up to that was they asked what version are you using? SR3, SR5?
Yes, it's the R3 SR5 best practices template. I think it's 2.1.
The config version is 2.1.1. The software version is R3 SR5.
Okay, another question is, can purchase orders be automatically created based on the work that will be coming up or coming up in the coming months if parts are put into the work?
So we have something that's called the safety stock quantity and the order, where am I looking at, the reorder point here. So those two fields kind of work hand in hand with each other and will actually give you a warning or some of a notification to say that this part, test part 1, has reached its reorder point. We recommend you create a purchase order. That's not necessarily to say we can't create an automatic record to be created from that point, but for our best practices template, it does not auto-create one, but yes, you would be able to for more of a customized rule for yourself.
All right, we'll take a few more minutes here to see if any other questions come up, and otherwise we'll just hang on the line. Okay, another question came in, and it is, can the purchase order you generated be exported and sent outside of the system?
Not necessarily exported. We could have a purchase order like details report possibly created that would give you all the details of the purchase order, and you'd be able to print that out and hand it to or email it to whoever is concerned with the purchase order.
You can also export certain queries and data from the purchase order. So
yeah, depending on how much information you have in a query. So if I were to look at this query here, I can see my test part number and all the information here. It doesn't give you the exact information that's on the purchase order, or for this scenario, I'm just looking at a parts. So I'm going to look at a purchase order query here.
one big distinction I would like to make, though, is that when exporting data, most queries aren't validated. So that's not meaning you can't go and validate your own queries if you want to. It's just that, if you export data from something that isn't validated, that data itself would be validated. So normally I would recommend going down the route of reports, which is easier to validate and customize as well.
Correct. Yeah, so kind of piggybacking on what Nick is saying right now, when we use any of these queries to export, that's not necessarily a valid query. We don't validate those. You are able to use them and export these to Excel file, however you need it to. But the reports that we would create, those are always validated. So that would be part of the validation protocol. We would create PQ tests around that stuff, and that would actually give you more of a detailed purchase order information as well.
A follow-up to that is they asked if the purchase order that's printed, is it native to the system?
Purchase order report.
I guess when you're speaking, like when they asked about generating and having it exported, they just asked then if it's printed, is it native to the system?
So we have a purchase order details report. Let me see. I'm not sure if it'll run. It does.
So by native to the system, I'm going to assume that it means part of the templated package. And as you can see there are two reports here that are part of the purchase orders. So those are the only two reports that we have native with the best practices template that it pertains to purchase orders.
Yeah, sorry guys, unfortunately my reporting is acting up a little bit. I've been trying to work on it to get it fixed, but it gives me some weird errors every now and then. We do have PDF copies of what the purchase order report would look like, so if anybody does need one of those, we can let us know. We can email you those out if you'd like to see what it would look like. But yes, we do have two reports as part of our template product for the purchase orders.
Okay, they followed up and said they just wanted to see if they would be able to edit the purchase order template to add T's and C's. Yes, I would like to copy.
I mean, the templates are configurable. It's just going down the route of configuration time and then assessing what parts of that need to be validated. If there's simple field additions or form changes, the validation behind that is fairly minimal and easy. But if it's actual changes to flows, that might be a little bit more arduous to go about. So really we have to get the idea of the full scope of what we're going to change. Templates are configurable, are changeable. It's just what specifically are we going to change.
And if there's more to the question that would, if you'd benefit from having further discussion offline, we can definitely have someone follow up with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, those are the questions that we have for right now, but we'll stay on the line here for a few more minutes just in case anybody else thinks of anything. Okay, that seems to be all the questions that we have for today. But if you do have any other questions that come up, please feel free to reach out to us. You can either call us or email sales@coolblue.com. And in addition, we want to point out that our next event will be on, let me double check the date, November 6th, and November 6th, which will be our customer lab, and that's going to be covering event schedules. And so again, if you're registered, you can just join, or the registration link can also be found in the chat window. Otherwise, we want to thank everyone for joining us today, and we hope to see you at our next event.
Thank you, guys.